This is Suma Rauji of Cakes and More, and you're watching the video series Baking for Beginners. There are a number of recipes which require almond meal, that is ground almonds, and you could be using them in your cakes or brownies or maybe some other dessert. And using almond meal in your cakes and desserts gives it a really good nutty taste and aroma to your dessert and your bakes. You could of course purchase the commercially available almond meal if you have easy access to it, but then be sure that it's not rancid, because nuts tend to go rancid very quickly. Commercial almond meal is also more fine and more uniform in texture, but if you'd have to grind almonds at home to make your almond meal, that's also quite easy, especially if the recipe has some amount of sugar or flour in it. You would need to keep a few things in mind when you grind almonds. If you have stored your nuts in the freezer, then you would need to get them to room temperature first. If you prefer your almond meal completely free of the color of this darkish skin, then you could first put your almonds in some water, maybe some hot water, and then peel off the skin so that you could have some blanched almonds, and then you could dry these completely. You would have to wait for these to dry completely, and then you could continue with the process of grinding them. But otherwise, unless it's really relevant in the recipe, I do not find the need to blanch the almonds, because it only gives the almond meal a slightly darker color, which is fine with me, doesn't really bother me. Whenever you grind any kind of nuts, they tend to leave out their natural oils, and the longer you process them, there is more oil released by the nuts. So the aim here is to keep the processing time as short as possible, so that you do make the nuts fine and powdery without getting them oily. So what I like to do is, I like to first take these whole almonds. I like to put them in a thick Ziploc bag or a plastic cover, and then I bash them up really well using a rolling pin, so that you get something like this. This is almost ground now. We need them a lot more finer, but then what we can do is we can now process these almonds, which are already quite fine, so that you get your really fine almond meal without having to do a lot of processing in your food processor. When you bash up the almonds and make them something like this, then you do not need to process them for a very long time, and so you do get the fine almond meal without making the powder really oily. If the almonds turn oily or pasty, then you would not be able to mix it really well with the flour, and then you may also have some lumps of almond meal here and there, which is not really pleasant. Now, assuming I need about 50 grams of almond meal in my recipe, I will take about 50 grams of almonds, and I haven't blanched them, of course. I have just bashed them up with a rolling pin. I'll be putting this in the smallest jar of my processor. You do not want to fill the jar or even take nuts halfway through, because more the nuts, then more the processing time, and then the danger of them turning oily again. And now I have taken about 2 tablespoons of sugar, which is from the recipe, that is from the ingredient list of the recipe. If the recipe has half a cup of sugar, then I have taken 2 tablespoons out of it, and then I'm going to be using this with the almonds now. And now we need to grind this in really short spurts, as in just a few seconds at a time. And then again keep redistributing the nuts, and then a few seconds again. And always at the lowest speed. So that you have your almonds quite fine. This may not be as fine as commercially available almond meal, but I think this works good. If at any point of time you think that your nuts are turning oily, then you could try adding some flour in the recipe if the recipe contains some flour, or maybe you could also use flour in place of the sugar if the recipe has flour in it. You could now store this airtight in the freezer for quite some time, maybe a few months. And do not forget to label the cover if you are as forgetful as me, because then you may forget how much of almonds and how much of sugar is already in here, so that you can keep that in mind when you are making something. So this goes to the list of those small things which can make a lot of difference to your bakes and desserts. There are lots more tips coming up on Cakes and More. Please do stay tuned.